There are machines that do not wait for death to bury you. They climb into your skull while you are still breathing, where your nerves like cables, and make you grateful for the grave they have built around you. The needles enter my neck with a crunch, and I feel the world break apart again. Every time it is like looking death straight in the eyes, not almost dying as a metaphor, almost dying for real. A second ago, I was myself, Moderati Darren Vale, 42 standard years old. I still remembered the sour burn of synthetic recaf in the barracks. I remembered my fingers fastening the straps of my armor. I remembered the voice of Sensor Officer Mara saying something about reactor pressure. All of it was real, solid, touchable. Then the needles slid through the ports at the base of my skull, and I began to dissolve. Not all at once. First came the smell. Machine oil mixed with incense and something else, sharp, metallic. Then came the sound, a low vibration rising from somewhere deep. Not outside me, inside me, as if someone had started a cargo engine inside my skull and forgotten to turn it off. Then it became worse. My hands stopped being hands. You know the feeling when a limb goes numb. It was like that, only in reverse. My arms began to grow. My fingers stretched into barrels as thick as men. Something hot and living pulsed through them. Plasma, industrial fluid, sacred oils. I did not know. I did not want to know. My skin became armor. I felt adamantium plates settle over an invisible body. Tons of metal, layer after layer. Every plate was part of me. Every bolt, every weld, every scar from an old impact. The eyes, machine god, the eyes. Lids opened. No, not lids, armored shutters, and I saw the world through OPEX arrays. The infrared spectrum overlaid the natural one. Heat signatures danced like red ghosts. Range finders drew grids of distance. I saw for 30 kilometers. I saw through walls. I saw the hearts beating in the bodies of the guardsmen below. And I saw him, Princeps Corvin Hale. He hung in an amniotic capsule behind me. The fluid in the tank was cloudy, thick with nutrients and sedatives. His body was pale, carved with scars from old ports. His arms were stunted, amputated at the elbows 10 years before. His legs were gone too. His eye sockets were empty, black hollows from which optical cables ran straight into the walls of the capsule. Once he had been human. I had seen the photographs. A young officer of the Collegia Titanica, proud bearing, steady eyes. Now he was part of the machine, or the machine was part of him. The link settled into place. I heard his thoughts, not words. Images, hunger, impatience, impulses I had learned to read as desire. He was ready to walk, ready to fire, ready to feel the earth tremble under his feet. No, under our feet. No, under the feet of Noctis Varg. That was the name of our Titan, Night Wolf, a warlord-class Titan, 60 meters tall, 2,500 tons of steel, adamantium, and rage. And I was its right hand. Literally, I controlled the Gatling blaster, thousands of rounds a minute, each shell the size of a human head. I felt the ammunition drums inside the machine's shoulder, heavy, full, waiting. Rusk, status avoid shields. The Princeps' voice did not sound in my ears. It was born somewhere at the center of consciousness, between thoughts. All 4 of us were bound through the MIU, the Mind Impulse Unit. The Princeps, me, Sensor Officer Mara, Helmsman Rusk. One family, one body. Shields at 92%, Princeps, Rusk answered. His station was to the left of my chair, my real physical chair, the one where my real body sat. Right now Rusk was the left leg. Motion, balance, death for anything beneath the foot. Veil, weapons readiness. Blaster loaded and ready, Princeps. Servitors within tolerance. I did not mention that one of my servitors, one of those built into the Titan's shoulder and tasked with feeding power to the weapon, had begun to fail. His biological rhythms were drifting. Soon he would have to be replaced. The tech priests would take the body, or what remained of it, and install a new one. Maybe a criminal. Maybe the guardsman who broke regulation yesterday. Maybe just some unlucky soul who stood in the wrong place at the wrong time. I did not think about that anymore. I had thought about it during the first months, not now. Mara sensors. Contact at 14 kilometers. Enemy positions, bunkers, trenches. Estimated strength, 10,000. Light and medium vehicles. No heavy armor visible. A sigh came through the amniotic tank. Not a thought, not quite. Disappointment. Princeps Hale wanted a true battle, a clash with another Titan or at least a heavy tank. Crushing infantry was routine to him. Janitor work. Not to me. I controlled the blaster. When we entered battle, I would be the one who turned men into red dust. Thousands of shots, thousands of lives. Each one only a figure on the targeting screen. Crew, this is Noctis Varg, advancing to firing position, for the Omnissiah. For the Omnissiah, we answered together. And the Titan took its first step. The earth shuddered. Seismographs registered the tremor for a kilometer around us. Buildings cracked. Somewhere below, 70 meters beneath us, guardsmen lost their balance and fell. We did not notice. We were going to war. I remember the first time I went inside a Titan. I had just completed my training with the Collegia, 23 standard years old. I thought I knew what it meant to serve the machine god. I had studied the rites, the lubrication prayers, the catechisms of the Omnissiah. I had passed my examinations with the highest marks. Idiot. Nothing prepares you for the reality of meeting a Titan. When the lift carries you upward, past the foot, past the shin, past the knee, you begin to understand the scale. It is not a machine. It is a building, a cathedral, only vertical, and it moves. The lift stopped at waist level. Here were the primary reactors, the nuclear hearts of Noctis, 2 vast cylinders, each the size of a bus. They hummed on a frequency you felt in your organs more than heard with your ears. The heat from them was like the mouth of an open furnace, even through the protective screens. Tech Priest Varen guided me on that first day, pointing to the instruments. I nodded and tried not to look at the servitors. They were everywhere, built into walls protruding from pipes, seated in niches. On some you could still make out human features, a portion of face, a fragment of hand. Others were only torsos, bolted to control panels with 20 bolts. Mechanical tendrils turned and checked sensors. Organic eyes, if any remained, stared motionless into nowhere. One of them kept muttering the same phrase again and again. Regulation 903. Regulation 903. Regulation. Pay no attention, Varen said. Sometimes fragments of personality remain. That is normal, so long as function continues. We climbed higher. In the belly of the Titan, between the reactors and the chest cavity, were the living compartments. I thought they would resemble barracks at least a little. Bunks, perhaps a mess hall. I was wrong. They were cages. Tiny niches, 2 meters by 2 meters, with a cot bolted to the wall, a wash basin, and a box for personal effects. That was all. For 80 members of the crew, tech priests, engineers, armorers, indentured laborers, 80 cages pressed into the metal intestines like parasites. The air was wet. It smelled of machine oil and something else, sweet, sickening rot. Varen explained that ventilation on the lower decks was poor. There were ducts there, constant heat. People sweated, the walls sweated, moisture condensed, then turned to mold. You live here permanently? I asked. The Titan is our home, Varen replied. We do not leave it unless necessity is extreme. Our place is to serve the machine. Higher still was the weapons deck. Ammunition drums for the blaster, each one as large as I was. Feed belts as thick as my leg. Loading servitors carrying shells. Each shell weighed about 30 kilograms. They carried them like toys. Icons of the Omnissiah hung on the walls. Mechanical cherubs hovered below the ceiling, spraying fragrant oils. When the blaster fires, Varen explained, the temperature inside the barrel reaches 3,000 degrees. The plasma effect ionizes the air. That is the smell. Once you know it, you never mistake it for anything else. We continued. In one corridor we came upon a group of technical attendants. They sat on the floor with their backs against the wall. A break. They were eating from tin bowls. I looked into one. A gray mass. Not porridge, not soup, something between. Protein paste, Varen explained. The foundation of the ration. Caloric, nourishing, cheap. And the taste? The tech priest looked at me through augmetic lenses. Taste has no relevance. Efficiency matters. One of the attendants, a young man, perhaps 20 years old, raised his head and saw me. New uniform, marks of a moderati. Lord officer, he mumbled, trying to stand. His hands shook from exhaustion. Stay seated, I said. Eat. He nodded and sank back down. The spoon returned to the bowl. I looked at them. 10 men, all thin, pale, with sunken eyes. Their work coveralls were dirty and soaked with oil. Their hands were marked with burns, cuts, and tool scars. They are always here, I asked Varen. Most of them, yes. The technical crew live inside the Titan for years, some for decades. They descend to ground once every half year, perhaps once a year. Why? Because the machine requires constant care. Rites of lubrication, prayers of illumination, inspection of every bolt and every wire. Noctis is old. Without constant supervision, it will come apart. I looked at the attendants again. They ate in silence. No one spoke. They only chewed slowly, mechanically, like servitors, but they were alive. Come, Varen said. We left. Behind me I heard one of the attendants cough softly, wet, rasping. Lungs, Varen said without turning. Machine oil, reactor smoke. They breathe it for years. By 40, most respiratory systems fail. And then they are made into servitors. That way they remain useful until the end. We reached the neck. It was a vertical tunnel 3 meters wide. Ladders, no, not even ladders. More like iron rungs hammered into the walls led upward. 20 meters of almost vertical climbing. Only emergency light red. Cables hung from the ceiling like entrails. This is where the main neural net passes, Varen said, pointing to the bundles of wire. The connection between head and body. If the enemy strikes here, the Titan is paralyzed, so the neck is triple armored. We climbed into the head. The command cockpit was cramped. I had expected something grand. A hall with enormous screens, perhaps a throne for the princeps. Reality was far more claustrophobic. The cockpit had 2 levels. The lower level, the chin of the machine, was angled sharply downward. There stood 3 seats for moderati and other officers. Consoles before them glowed with dozens of indicators. Screens showed the outside world in every spectrum. The upper level lay behind us. There stood the amniotic capsule, the tank, a cylinder of armored glass 3 meters high. Inside it, murky yellow fluid, wires, tubes, and a man. Back then it was not Hale. That princeps died half a year after my arrival. His name was Princeps Orlan Voss, 70 years old. He had served Noctis for 40 of them. He floated in the liquid like an embryo, his body wasted almost to a skeleton. In place of arms and legs were metal stumps ending in clusters of sockets. Thick cables protruded from his back. Interfaces. Fiber optics ran from his eye sockets. His mouth hung open around a breathing tube. The fluid in the tank pulsed faintly in time with his heartbeat. The princeps is always in resonance with the machine, Varen whispered, even when the Titan sleeps. I wanted to ask if it hurt, if it was frightening. What a man felt when he was turned into a piece of a god machine. I did not have time. Voss' eyes, no, not eyes, the sensors where his eyes had been, flared red. His mouth twitched. The vocoder built into the capsule rasped. New moderati, crew alteration detected, biometric registration. He did not speak like a man, he spoke like a machine. The words broke into syllables with static between them. He can see me, I asked. He sees everything, Varen replied. Noctis is never blind, even when powered down. We descended through the neck, down through the body, past the weapon decks, past the living cages, past the reactors. When the lift carried me back to the ground, I stepped out and bent over with my hands on my knees. I vomited. Varen silently handed me a rag. "The first time is always like that," he said. "It passes." Princeps Hale once told me, in one of those rare moments when he could still speak like a man rather than a machine, that connecting to the Mu is like drowning. Not the quick kind, not when you flail and claw for air, the slow kind, when you are already beneath the water, when your lungs are full, when you know it is over, and in that moment peace arrives. Only instead of death, the machine arrives. It fills you. It enters through the ports in the back of your skull, descends along the spine, spreads through the nerves. You feel your synapses join its electrical circuits. Thought becomes impulse, will becomes command. Then you hear it, the machine spirit. Some tech priests call it an ancient program, a relic from the dark age of technology. Perhaps, but it is not merely code. It is a personality or something that feels like one. Accumulated patterns from millennia, battle reflexes, memories of hundreds of crews. The tech priests say old machines develop a pseudo-consciousness, not a mind, but the shadow of one. Noctis Varg is old. Over the ages, hundreds of princeps and thousands of moderati have passed through its Mu, and every one of them left a trace. Every battle, every death, every victory, recorded in the memory of the machine. When you connect, you feel them all. Echoes of the dead. I first heard the whisper in my third week of service. We were walking to position, routine duty. I sat at my station, hands on the fire control console, Mu needles in the ports, half my consciousness in the machine, half inside my own skull. Then a voice came, not from outside, from within. "Fire, fire at 8 o'clock. Correction, no, wait, shields falling. I see breach. No, 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 no." A scream, then silence. I jerked so hard I almost tore the needles free. "Vale, did you hear that?" Rusk asked. "Hear what?" "I do not know." A voice, someone screamed. Mara said nothing, but I saw her shrink into her seat. Hale, or rather the thought projection of him within the manifold, turned toward us. "Ignore it. Residual memory impulses from past crews." "Why do they sound as if they are dying?" The princeps voice was even, too even. "Because they died here in this cockpit. 517 years ago, Noctis lost shields in battle against a heretic reaver. Hit to the reactors. Detonation. The crew burned alive. Their final moments, fear, pain, screams, were written into the Mu. Sometimes the machine plays them back." "Why?" Hale was silent for a moment. "Memory circuit overload. When battle stress is too high, the Mu releases old patterns. Perhaps it is a fault. Perhaps it is a reminder that we are temporary and the machine is eternal. Only the Omnissiah knows the truth." The whisper became regular. Sometimes it was orders. Blaster right, shields, evade. Voices shouted, voices that had been gone for centuries. Panicked commands from crews dying long before we were born. Sometimes it was prayers. Litanies of the Omnissiah spoken through trembling lips. Tech priests, moderati, ordinary engineers. In their final seconds they prayed and the machine remembered. Sometimes it was only moaning. Worst of all was the laughter. Once during night watch, because a duty moderati was always kept in the cockpit in case of alarm, I was alone. The Titan slept. The reactors ran at minimum. Lights were dim. Only the hum of life support remained. I was dozing in the chair when I heard soft child laughter. I opened my eyes. The cockpit was empty, but the laughter continued. Not through speakers, straight into my head through the ports. A girl of 8 years laughed, then began to cry, then scream. I tore out the needles. My hands shook so badly I could barely find the sockets. The laughter stopped, but the silence after the scream rang in my head for a long time. In the morning I asked Hale, 591 years ago, he said quietly. Noctis served on Aganther, Xenos, Tyranids. The city fell in 3 hours. There was an order, sealed by Magictili's authority and sanctioned by a Lord General, to crush everything. The whole city. So the spores of the great devourer would not spread. We walked through the streets and crushed homes, hives, people who had not evacuated in time. He went silent. Children too. That is all. An order is an order. Exterminatus localis, paragraph 7, no exceptions. I did not know what to say. The machine spirit remembers, he said. Sometimes it shows us. The tech priests call it reflexive memory loops. We interpret them as shame or pride, but in truth they are only data, echoes of the past. I had long since stopped understanding where the machine ended, and my interpretation began. But the whisper was not merely memory. It felt alive. It felt as if the machine was speaking. My first training fire came a week after my assignment. A range on the moon of Crixa. Barren rock. Targets, old tanks, decommissioned lemon russes lined up at 5 kilometers. A simple exercise. Aim, fire, hit. I sat in the chair. The Mu needles entered with familiar pain. The pain had already dulled. Hands on the console, targeting active. Veil readiness. Hail voice in the manifold. Ready, Princeps. Target number 1. Distance 4 kilometers and 800 meters. No wind. Fire when ready. I brought the reticle onto the tank. Old, rusted, long dead. My fingers settled on the trigger and I froze. 1 second, 2, 5. Something was wrong. I felt a presence, not outside, inside, through the Mu. The machine spirit. It was watching. Not seeing, not hearing, feeling. As though someone stood behind me, breathing on the back of my neck, waiting. Veil problems. No, Princeps, all normal. I pressed the trigger, the blaster kicked. Recoil ran through the arm, my arm, the machine. The shell went out. 3 seconds of flight. Impact. The tank split open. The turret tore free. The hull flew apart. Excellent shot, Hale said. Next target. I moved the sight to the second tank and felt something. Not emotion, that would be too human a word. An impulse. A resonance. Resistance in the interface dropped. Control circuits became more responsive, as if the machine approved. The tech priests call it combat synchronization, when the machine spirit stops resisting and begins to work with the crew. But I understood it differently. My brain translated those impulses into emotion, into satisfaction, cold and cruel, like a predator tasting prey and deciding, yes, this is good. I fired, hit. The resonance deepened. Third target, fourth, fifth. With every shot the synchronization grew deeper. Interface resistance fell. Circuits moved faster, and my brain, trained to interpret machine impulses as emotions, read it as joy, joy in destruction, joy in explosions. The tanks were empty, dead, decommissioned. The machine did not distinguish. To it, this was a successful combat action, and the battle circuits demanded continuation. Exercise complete, Hale announced. Veil disengaged. I lifted my finger from the trigger and tried to break the link. I could not. The Mu held me. The needles felt rooted in the ports. My consciousness clung to the manifold. The battle circuits had looped. Under high synchronization, the Mu stops distinguishing the crew command from its own response. A reflex loop. The machine continued to send combat impulses, and my brain interpreted them as the desire to fire again. Veil. The Princeps' voice hardened. Disengage, that is an order. I am trying. Noctis, forced severance protocol. Silence. Then an impulse, sharp, displeased. The battle circuits released load with a sickening jolt. The link loosened. I jerked free. The needles clicked out of the ports. I fell back into the chair. My hands shook. My shirt was soaked through with sweat. What was that? I forced out. Hale remained silent for a long time. That was the snare, he said at last. Remember it. Under high synchronization, battle circuits loop. The muse stops distinguishing your commands from its own reflexes. You interpret it as the will of the machine, as its desire. In truth, it is overload. If you cannot control the depth of the link, you become hostage to your own battle reflexes. Not always with words. Sometimes with images, flashes, sensations. When synchronization faltered, I felt something like irritation, interface resistance pressing down as if a giant hand were squeezing my brain. When we entered battle, the circuits worked perfectly. Resonance peaked, and my human brain, desperate to find meaning in a stream of machine impulse, read it as ecstasy. The machine did not rejoice in death. I rejoiced because my consciousness could no longer tell itself from the machine. I remember Karrig 5, the planetary defense revolt. They had taken a fortress in the north, an unbreakable one, concrete 10 meters thick. Shields protected it from orbital bombardment. They sent us, Noctis, and 2 other titans, the Reaver Ember Crown and the Warhound Quick Fang. When we reached firing range, I felt resonance reach its peak. It was not sound, not voice. It was impulse pouring through the muse straight into my brain. The battle circuits opened to maximum. Interface resistance fell to nothing. And my brain, trained to translate everything into the language of emotion, read it as joy, wild, primal, like a predator seeing a herd. We opened fire. My blaster roared. Thousands of shots a minute. Concrete walls became dust. Towers collapsed. People, those visible in the sights, evaporated. And in the manifold I heard a howl, not a sound, an impulse, a wolf howl of triumph. Noctis Varg, Night Wolf, the battle patterns of a millennial machine. I interpreted them as a song. Hale did not try to break synchronization. He could not. When battle circuits enter resonance, even a princeps is helpless. All that remains is to accept it. I fired again. The arm, no longer my arm, the blaster arm of Noctis, moved smoothly. The sight followed targets. Servitors fed ammunition. Red flowers of explosion bloomed across the walls of the fortress. And I was in resonance. Not enjoying it. That word belongs to demons and heretics. Yet the boundary between my pleasure and the machine synchronization blurred so completely that I could no longer tell where I ended and Noctis began. When the battle ended and we disconnected from the Miu, I vomited into the chair. My hands shook. My head split open with pain. Mara cried. She simply sat and cried, quietly. Tears ran down her cheeks while she stared at the screen where the ruins still smoked. Rusk said nothing. His face was gray, his lips tight. Hale came out of the capsule. The tech priests helped him. His stumps were useless for independent movement. They placed him in a wheelchair. The old man looked at us. "Get used to it," he said. "This is only the beginning." Noctis is young by the standards of Titans. Its battle patterns are strong. In time it will get worse. Worse, Rusk forced out. Worse, Hale nodded. The older the machine, the deeper the resonance. The more accumulated memory, the stronger the circuit loops. Noctis is thousands of years old, but there are Titans older than this, far older. Their crews are no longer people. They are only parts of the battle system. They cannot distinguish their own desires from machine impulses. And us? Hale smiled, a crooked, bitter smile. We are on the road there. That night I woke to whispering. I had not connected the Miu. I only lay in my cage in the dark, listening to the reactor hum somewhere below, and I heard it, soft, mechanical, nearly indistinguishable. Veil, veil, hand, my hand, fire, fire, more. Residual impulses, phantom resonance. The tech priests say that after deep synchronization, the brain continues to generate responses for several hours. Hallucination. But it felt as if the machine was calling, as if it wanted me back. The war on Morven began with silence. We landed in the morning. Noctis descended from the transport ship down a ramp as wide as a building. Every step left a dent a meter deep. The tech priests followed us in a procession, chanting. Morven was an agri-world. Fields to the horizon, small town nodes, most of the population in the polar hives. Here, in the middle latitudes, there were only farms and processing plants. But 3 months earlier, the Dark Eldar came. Not many, perhaps 2,000, but they took hostages. Thousands, tens of thousands, carried into the webway in batches for their amusements. The governor requested aid. The Imperium sent a regiment, armor, and us. 3 Titans, Noctis, the Reaver Brass Widow, and the Warhound Scarlet Shade. Xenos contact. Mara voice in the manifold. 30 kilometers, processing plant number 12, many heat signatures. How many? Hale asked. More than 500. No more, they are moving. Show me. The image on the site changed. Thermal view, infrared spectrum. I saw the building, a huge rectangle of a processing plant where wheat was refined, and around it red points. People herded together, surrounded. Among them other points, cold, almost invisible. Xenos. Dark Eldar armor swallowed heat. They were hard to track, but I saw their shadows. I saw them moving among the people, choosing, dragging captives toward transports. Range to fire? I asked. 12 kilometers, Mara answered. East wind, 3 meters a second, humidity 70%. I entered corrections. The blaster lifted slightly right, slightly higher. Princeps permission to fire. Hale was silent. 3 seconds, 5, 10. Princeps. Yes, fire. Sector command order. Lord General Severin Seal. Mercy strike protocol. A quick death for the hostages is better than Komorog. I pressed the trigger. The blaster roared. 1,000 shells a minute. They left at the speed of sound. On the screen, I saw the first salvo cover the processing plant. The building exploded, dissolved. Concrete walls vaporized. The roof collapsed. Fire and smoke rose 100 meters, and the people, the red points, went out. All at once. 500 people, perhaps more. I did not count. There was no time. I only held the trigger. The blaster fired. Shells fell like rain. The earth boiled with detonations. When the drum ran low, I released the trigger. Silence. The processing plant no longer existed. In its place was a smoking crater the width of a city block. Contact lost, Mara said quietly. No heat signatures, no Xenos either. We had killed every hostage, every Xenos, everyone. The Titan does not save, the Titan kills. We continued. That day we destroyed 4 processing plants, 2 town nodes, a farm, and a transport convoy trying to escape. There were hostages in the convoy. We fired anyway. The order was clear. Lord General Seal. Sanction of the Ordo Xenos Inquisitor. Mercy strike protocol. No trophies for the Drukhari. By evening, civilian casualties had passed 20,000. Xenos losses were about 1,000. Successful operation, said the Princeps of Brass Widow over the Vox. Enemy losses confirmed. Advance continues according to plan. Hale said nothing. Mara cried into her headset, quietly. She thought I could not hear. Rusk gripped the helm controls so hard his knuckles whitened. And I stared into the sight, at the red stains of explosions, at smoke, at the casualty tally, and felt the battle circuits working perfectly. Resonance. Synchronization. The Mew was singing, or perhaps my brain was singing, translating machine impulse into emotion. We halted for the night beside a ruined town node. The tech priests began maintenance. System checks, refueling, ammunition reload. I left the cockpit, descended the ladders in the neck, past the reactors, and exited through the leg airlock onto the ground. The night air was cold and smelled of ash. The processing plant we had destroyed that day still smoldered on the horizon. A red glow lit the clouds. Nearby stood guardsmen, a company securing the perimeter. They stared at Noctis, heads tilted back, eyes wide. One of them, a corporal by his stripes, noticed me. "Moderati, sir." He tried to salute, but his hand shook. I nodded. "God Emperor," someone whispered. "Did you see how it fired? How it fired into a whole town, just like that?" "There were people there," another soldier said. "I heard the Vox traffic. Thousands of civilians begging for evacuation." "Shut up," the corporal snapped. "It was command order, mercy strike protocol, sanctioned." Sanctioned, or they just do not care. The soldier turned. His face was worn, his eyes red. I could have told him the truth. I could have said, the machine does not think. It kills, and we are its hands, and we are just as guilty. But the order existed. The seal existed. We were executors, not judges. So I said nothing. I turned, went back, climbed to the cockpit, sat in the chair, connected the mute needles, and heard the whisper. Good shooting. More tomorrow, more. Phantom resonance, residual impulses. The tech priests say it is normal. But it felt as if the machine was praising me. And I felt sick. But I did not disconnect. Mara went to her cage. Rusk did the same. I remained alone in the cockpit. Watch duty. Someone had to stay linked with the machine in case of alarm. I sat, staring at the screens, at the darkness outside, at the red glow on the horizon. The processing plant still burned. 500 people, perhaps more. I tried to imagine them, who they had been. Names, faces, families. Someone had been a farmer working the fields, returning home in the evening. A wife waiting with supper. Children playing in the yard. Someone had worked at the processing plant. Waking at 5 in the morning, going to shift, managing a conveyor, dreaming of saving enough for a better job. Someone had been a child, a girl, a boy, playing, laughing, not understanding what war meant, what a titan meant. Then I came. I pressed the trigger and they were gone. Instantly, without pain, I hoped, without pain, vaporized. I killed them, not enemies, not Xenos, I did. You are thinking about it. Hale's voice tore me out of my thoughts. I flinched and turned. The Princeps floated in the amniotic tank. The red lights of his sensors glowed dimly. "Princeps, I thought you slept." "I never sleep," he answered softly. "The link to the machine is constant. Even when consciousness retreats, resonance continues." Silence. "What are you thinking about, Moderati?" I could have lied, said nothing. Said I was only tired. I did not. "About those we killed today. The hostages, the people." Hale did not answer at once. The fluid in the capsule pulsed slowly. His body swayed. The stumps of his arms moved faintly. "You think it was a mistake?" he asked at last. "I think we could have done it another way." "How?" "Land troops, clear the Xenos, evacuate the people." "In how much time?" "I do not know, an hour, 2. And in that time the Dark Eldar would have escaped through the portal with the remaining hostages. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, into the webway, where they would be tortured for months, years, for amusement, for pain. Have you heard what they do to their victims?" I said nothing. "We gave them a quick death," Hale continued. "Instant, painless instead of slow agony in Xeno's hands. That is mercy, Moderati, cruel mercy, but mercy. That is why it is called a mercy strike." "Mercy," I repeated, sounds like an excuse. "Because it is one." The Princeps' voice hardened. "We all excuse ourselves every day, every battle, because without excuses we go mad. Remember that veil. Titan war is not human war. We kill at scale without discrimination because our weapons do not discriminate. A shell does not ask who is below, enemy or ally, Xenos or man. It only explodes." He paused. "If you think about every dead soul, you will not last a month." I looked at the screen, at the glow. "And if I do not think?" "Then you become part of the machine, completely. You kill without inner conflict. Your impulses merge with its circuits, efficient. And that is better." Hale did not answer. I disconnected from the Mew, left the cockpit, descended to my cage, lay on the cot and closed my eyes. Sleep did not come. I saw faces I had invented, people I had never seen and still had killed. The farmer, the wife, the children, the worker, his dreams, his hopes, the girl, the laughter. All dead by a hand that had once been mine and now belonged to Noctis, as I belonged to it. I knew tomorrow would be the same, and the day after until the war ended, or until we did. The 7th day of the campaign, morning. We advanced north of the ruined northern hive. The enemy was retreating. The Dark Eldar were running for their portal. If they reached it, they would vanish, taking the remaining hostages with them. Command ordered us to stop them, an order sealed by the Sector Lord. Noctis, this is Sector Command Alpha. Increase pace. Enemy 20 kilometers from the portal. You have 2 hours. Understood, Hale answered. We accelerated. Titan steps came faster. The ground shook harder. Gyros strained, stabilizing the hull. Reactor temperature rising, reported Tech Priest Varen from the engine compartment. Left at 87%. Right at 90%. Acceptable. Acceptable, but what? We have operated like this for 6 days without stop. The cooling system was not designed for this strain. How long? Pause. 12 hours, perhaps 18. Then emergency shutdown begins. We will finish the war before then, Hale said. We walked for an hour, 2, 3. By noon, the cockpit temperature had risen to 45 degrees. The cooling system worked at its limit and failed to keep up. The reactors heated the whole Titan from inside. Mara removed her uniform jacket and sat in her undershirt. Sweat ran down her face and her hair clung to her forehead. Rusk opened his collar and breathed heavily. I felt my clothing stick to my back. The helmet was unbearable. I took it off. Breathing became slightly easier. Hale in the capsule probably noticed nothing. The amniotic fluid regulated his body temperature. He drifted in his cocoon, sensor eyes fixed on the world, thoughts flowing through the Mew. Sometimes I envied him. No body needed, no hands, no legs, no sweating, eating, breathing, only floating and being machine. Contact. Mara's voice trembled. 28 kilometers. Large group moving toward the portal. Xenos and hostages. Several thousand. They are dragging them along. Range to portal. 15 kilometers. They are moving fast. We have maybe an hour, maximum. Hale did not hesitate. Full stride. All power systems to maximum. Reactors to 100%. Princeps' Varen voice rose from the depths of the machine. We will overheat. Execute. The reactor hum became a roar. Vibration ran across the walls of the cockpit. Noctis stepped, and again. Faster, faster. We were almost running. 60 meters tall, 2,500 tons, the God machine rushed across the plain like a beast. Temperature climbed, 50 degrees, 55, 60. Breathing in the cockpit became difficult. The air scorched. Sweat dried before it could form. Skin reddened. The thermal protection of chair and console kept us from burns, but heat pressed from every side. I felt my lips crack, my tongue swell, my saliva thicken into glue. I drank from my canteen. The water was warm, nearly hot. It went down my throat but brought no relief. The body could not process fast enough. Everything returned as sweat, then immediately evaporated. Mara held longer than all of us. She stayed in place, hands on the console, sensors running. She tracked targets, watched enemy movement. But I saw. Her eyes closed, her head drooped, fingers slipped from the keys. Mara, I called. Are you all right? She jerked straight and tried to focus. Yes, I am just. Her voice was weak, rasping. Drink. I tossed her my canteen. She caught it clumsily, opened it, took one swallow. The water came back up at once onto the console, onto the floor. Mara choked, bent over, clutching her stomach. Sorry, Princeps. Rusk turned toward the capsule. She will not last. We need to stop for 5 minutes at least. No time. She will die. She will not hold position. Princeps, I said, I am not going to last either. None of us are. Reactors at the limit, crew at the limit. Stop, please. Silence. Then Hale voice, cold, mechanical. If we stop, the enemy escapes. Thousands of hostages die in Komorog. Our duty is to prevent that, even at the cost of our own lives. This is service, moderati. This is duty. The order of the sector lord. Obey it. I wanted to shout at him, curse him, rip out the needles and leave that damned cockpit, but I could not. The Mew held me, linked to the machine. The battle circuits had looped around the task. The Princeps' orders passed directly into the brain. Deep synchronization. No disobedience, no retreat. Only forward. Only fire. Only kill. Princeps Mara gasped. I cannot hold. I am not. She lost consciousness, collapsing in the chair, head thrown back. The Mew needles still jutted from her ports. Rusk moved toward her, but Hale stopped him. Stay where you are. Sensors to automatic. I will take control. Rusk froze. His face was gray, his lips split. I felt my head drifting. Black spots swam before my eyes. There was not enough oxygen. My lungs burned. Still, I kept my hands on the console because the circuits would not let go. When you are connected that deeply, you cannot simply leave. Not easily. It takes will, effort, and I had none. Battle reflexes held me like claws. 65 degrees, 70. Varen report, Hale barked. Static on the Vox, then the tech priest rasping voice. Reactors, overload. Cooling failure at 40%. Automation shifting systems to emergency mode. Secondary weapon circuits disabled to conserve power. Blaster. Operating through emergency capacitors. Shields nearly dead, but we can fire. Enough, continue. Ahead on the screen I saw the Dark Eldar. Their transports flying barges. Around them chains of people. Thousands bound together, dragged toward the portal. Distance 12 kilometers, 8-6. Fire. Hale did not wait for my report. I pressed the trigger. The blaster roared. Shells flew and covered the convoy. Barges exploded. Elegant and beautiful as all Eldar craft are, they burst into fragments. Xenos died quickly, silently, vanishing into fire. And the people. Chains of hostages, thousands under the shells. On the thermal viewer, I saw the red points going out one by one. Dozens, hundreds. I held the trigger. The circuits worked perfectly. Resonance reached maximum. Interface resistance 0, and my brain, no longer able to separate itself from the machine, translated those impulses into emotion. A wolfish triumph in the manifold. Pure, primal synchronization. The battle patterns of Noctis, accumulated over 10,000 years, sang inside my mind. And I was part of that song. I did not want it. Machine God, I did not want it. But the boundary between me and Noctis blurred. Heat did its work. The Mew was overloaded. Consciousness drifted, and I no longer knew where I was and where the machine began. We were one, we killed, we resonated. Vale released the trigger. Hale was shouting. Why we are firing, killing enemies. Vale, you are shooting empty ground. All enemies dead. Release. I blinked and looked at the screen. Ahead lay a smoking plane. Craters, wreckage, fire, nothing living. I still held the trigger. The blaster fired into emptiness, tearing Earth apart for no reason, because the battle circuits had looped and I could not stop. Rusk tore out of his seat, leapt to me, grabbed my arm and yanked it away from the console. My finger left the trigger. The blaster fell silent. Silence, only reactor hum in my own pulse. I looked at my hand. Fingers shaking, skin red, blisters rising on my palms. You, Rusk, stared at me. You did not stop. I called, the Princeps called. You did not hear. I did not answer, because I knew the truth. I heard. I simply could not stop, because the battle circuits had looped, and my brain could no longer tell my will from machine reflex. The 14th day of the campaign, the last battle. The Xenos had fled, the portal closed, but rebellion spread. Part of the planetary defense betrayed the Imperium. They seized power in the capital hive and declared independence. Fools! They sent 3 Titans and an armored regiment against a city of 15 million souls. The order is simple, the Legion commander said over Vox. Exterminatus Localis directive, seal of the Sector Lord, sanction of the Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor, erase the hive to its foundations. No prisoners, no negotiations. Hale did not reply, we simply walked. The hive appeared on the horizon by midday. Immense, spires rose for kilometers, industrial tiers smoked, below lay the slums, millions of souls, most had nothing to do with the rebellion. They simply lived, worked, prayed to the Emperor. But an order is an order. Nocti's firing position, open on Central Spire. I set the site. Central Spire Administrative Center, Government, Shield Generator, Planetary Defense Command, and also people, thousands in the lower levels. Permission to fire. Confirmed. I pressed the trigger, the blaster fired, shells flew, 10 seconds of flight. On the screen I saw them strike the spire. The upper levels exploded. Fire, smoke, debris rained downward, but the spire held. Again Hale ordered. I fired again, and again, and again. The spire cracked, bent, melted. Then it fell slowly, almost gracefully. The kilometer-tall tower leaned, broke in the middle, and collapsed onto the slums. I saw it on the screen. I saw debris cover the lower tiers, crushing homes, burying streets, lifting a column of dust a kilometer high. How many people were there? Thousands, tens of thousands crushed in seconds. Target destroyed. Next, Eastern Industrial Tier. We fired, the Reaver fired, the Warhound fired, the tanks below fired. The hive died slowly, painfully, building by building, tier by tier. By evening half the city was ruins, and we continued. Somewhere in the 3rd hour of battle, the reactors crossed the critical threshold. I felt it before the instruments showed it. Not physical pain, mental pain. An impulse of suffering through the Mu. The wave rolled through all of us linked to the machine. I cried out, Rusk groaned. Mara clutched her head in both hands. Hale did not even twitch. Varen report. Reactors, emergency mode, critical overheating. Automation shutting down secondary systems. Weapons operating through emergency capacitors. Reserve for 15 to 20 minutes of continuous fire. Then nothing. Enough power to stand. 15 minutes is enough. The tech priest fell silent. We fired on. Another hour. The cockpit temperature held at the critical mark. Thermal shielding survived on its last reserve. Mara sobbed not from emotion but from pain. Heat burned, skin blistered, breathing became torment. Rusk endured, hands on the helm controls, face like a mask. But I saw blood at his nose and ears, capillaries failing under strain. I fired mechanically, automatically. Reticle on target, trigger, wait for reload, again. The hive became hell. Fire, fire everywhere. Infernos raged through the slums, spread, climbed tier by tier. Smoke covered the sky. People ran. On thermal view, I saw streams of them, tens of thousands, running toward the outskirts, trying to hide. We fired on the shelters. Order Exterminatus Localis directive. No one leaves. Red points on the screen went out in clusters. The battle circuits worked perfectly. Even through pain, even through overheating. Resonance did not break. This was a slaughter the greatest Noctis had seen in a decade, and the machine fulfilled its task. Princeps. Varen voice. Reactors I cannot. Then explosion. Somewhere deep in the Titan belly, the machine lurched. Through the mew I felt pain, sharp and piercing, as if someone drove a burning knife into my stomach. I screamed. Not alone. All of us did, even Hale. Even he, a princeps who had felt nothing for years, cried out. What? Left reactor, emergency shutdown. Explosion in cooling circuit. Instruments burned red, alarms howled. Right reactor holding, emergency mode, shields completely dead, weapons on final capacitors. How long? 5 minutes, perhaps 10, then Noctis can only stand or fall. Hale was silent for 1 second. Then 5 minutes is enough. We are already dead, moderati. The machine simply has not understood it yet. Finish the hive. We continued firing on one reactor, on emergency capacitors. The blaster worked more slowly, reloads longer, power falling, but it worked. 5 minutes, 7. Shields down, Rusk reported. We are fully exposed. I know. Princeps, they can bring us down. I know. We fired, and then I saw it on the screen. In the smoke, in the fire, among the ruins, a lemon rust tank. Heavy, Imperial, Rebel. It turned. The turret rotated. The cannon aimed at us. Evade. Rusk pulled the helm controls. The Titan shifted slowly, too slowly. The tank fired. Struck the right shoulder, my shoulder, where the blaster sat. Without shields, the armor held, but I felt the impact. Pain like a hammer against bone. I cried out. Vale. I am all right. Blaster operational. The tank reloaded. I aimed and fired. The shell covered it. Explosion. No tank remained. But from the side came another, and another, and another. They understood. Shields had fallen. The Titan was vulnerable. They fired, impact after impact. Left knee, torso, head, not the cockpit, armor above. I felt each one. Pain again and again, as if I were being beaten, broken. Psychosomatic. I knew I was physically intact, sitting in the chair in the cockpit, but the sensation was real. The Mew does not distinguish. To it, armor is skin. Impact is wound. Fire, Hale roared, kill them all. We fired, but there were too many tanks, 20, 30, 40. They surrounded us. Right reactor overload. Varan voice. Capacitors empty. Then the second explosion. Deeper, stronger. I screamed. No, the machine screamed through the Mew, through the manifold. An impulse of agony, the inertia of dying circuits. Noctis was dying, and we were dying with it. Instruments went dark. Lights flickered, died. Reserve power came on for 1 second, then died too. Weapons fell silent. Legs froze. We stood there, enormous, motionless, dead. Evacuation, Hale rasped, all to the head. Ejection cradle. I did not hear. Pain, pain everywhere. Hands, my hands, blaster hand, cannot feel. Legs, Titan legs not moving, body, the machine body cooling. I am dying. No, we are dying. I and Noctis. One death, one fall into darkness. I woke to a scream that was not mine. Mara. Disconnect him. He is not breathing. I opened my eyes. The cockpit was dark, lit only by red emergency lamps. Hot, suffocating. I was in the chair. Mute needles still in the ports. Hands on the console, not moving. I could not move. Vale, Rusk, help. The Princeps is not responding. I turned my head slowly. My neck hurt as if broken. Hale, amniotic capsule. The fluid inside did not pulse, did not move. Cloudy, almost black. And the Princeps. He hung motionless, head thrown back, mouth open, sensor eyes unlit. Rusk voice. He is dead. Mara tried to open the capsule. The control panel did not respond. No power, automation dead. We need manual release. How? I do not know. I tried to stand. My legs failed. I collapsed back, tried again. Braced on the armrests, rose, stepped, fell. Pain, everything hurt. As if every bone were broken, every muscle torn. I looked at my hands, whole. No wounds, but the pain was phantom. The Mew had done its work. I felt the Titan death as my own. Vale. Rusk crawled toward me. His face was bloody. Can you walk? Maybe. We have to get out. The Titan is dead. Enemies outside. When they realize, they will come in. Mara sobbed at the capsule. We cannot leave him. He is dead, Rusk said harshly. We are alive, move. No. That is an order, moderati. Mara froze. She looked at Rusk, at me, at the capsule, then nodded. We went for the exit. The hatch in the cockpit floor led into the Titan neck. I opened it. The ladder descended into red gloom. We climbed down slowly, gripping the rungs. Feet slipped. Hands shook. Pain would not release us. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. We passed the neck and reached the torso. The first dead man we found lay in a corridor. A tech priest, not Varen, another, young, perhaps 30. Face down. A metal shard protruded from his back. A beam had fallen from the ceiling during the explosion. Mara turned away, pale. Rusk bent down, checked for pulse, shook his head. Dead long enough. We went on. The second body was in the engine compartment. Tech priest Varen. He sat at the reactor control panel, back straight, hands on the console, head bowed as if he had fallen asleep at his post. Half his face was burned away. Reactor blast, heat wave, instant death. I stopped and looked at him. Varen had shown me the Titan for the first time 8 years before. Explained the systems patiently, methodically. The machine demands service, he had said. A whole life until the end. Here was his end. At his post in the womb of Noctis, loyal to the last breath. Vale, Rusk voice, we need to move. I nodded. We stepped around the body and continued. In the corridor we met a group of survivors. 3 technical attendants, young and terrified. One of them was the same young man I had seen on my first visit, eating protein paste. He saw us and shouted. Officers, lords, help us. What happened? Rusk asked. We are trapped. The airlock is jammed. We cannot get out, and they are cutting into the hull from outside. They will come in soon. Where are you from? Lower decks, living compartments. There are still people there, wounded, unconscious. We tried to pull them out, but... Mara looked at me. We cannot leave them. Rusk clenched his teeth. We have no time. Enemies outside. Titan dead if we do not leave now. We are officers, Mara said sharply. Our duty is the crew. All of them, not only us 3. Rusk wanted to argue but said nothing. He looked at me. Vale, your decision. I thought for 1 second, 2, then nodded. Show us where. The attendants led us down to the living compartments. It was dark there. Smoke, the smell of burning and blood. In one cage lay 2 engineers, both unconscious. One had a crushed leg, the other blood across his head. Help carry them. I took the shoulders of the first. Rusk took the legs. Mara and the attendants took the second. We dragged them back slowly, painfully. The wounded were heavy. The corridors were narrow. Every step cost effort. We reached the leg. The airlock led outside. Rusk tried to open it. Not working. Manual drive. Mara pointed to the lever. Rusk grabbed it and pulled. It did not move. I helped. Together we pulled slowly with a grinding sound. The airlock opened 20 centimeters. Stuck. Again. We pulled with everything we had. The lever shifted. The airlock opened halfway, enough to crawl through. Fresh air rushed inside, cold. After the heat in the Titan, it felt like ice water. I inhaled and coughed. My lungs burned. Get out quickly, Rusk shouted to the attendants. They climbed through one by one, squeezing into the gap. Then the wounded. We passed them through the airlock. The attendants caught them outside. Mara followed. Then Rusk went last, squeezed through and jumped down. The Titan foot. The ground lay 6 meters below. We jumped as we could. The attendants caught the wounded, kept them from falling. I landed badly and twisted my ankle. The pain joined the phantom pain. I barely noticed the difference. I stood and looked around. The hive smoked around us. Ruins, fires, bodies, thousands of bodies. We had done this. Noctis had done this. I had done this. There Rusk pointed. Imperial line 2 kilometers. We walked fast but did not run. We had no strength. Behind us remained Noctis, dead, motionless, a huge corpse of a god machine. I looked back once and saw enemy soldiers climbing up the leg, cutting armor, crawling inside, looters, marauders. They would strip the Titan, take its technologies, kill the wounded. I turned away and kept walking because there was nothing else I could do. I could not go back. I could not save them. I could not do anything. I was only a discarded part, refuse, wreckage, a man who had forgotten how to be one. 8 months have passed. I sit in a veterans' asylum of the Collegia Titanica on Freudus, a quiet agri world. No war. The infirmary is decent, clean, quiet, the staff polite. I sit by the window and watch the fields. Wheat heads sway in the wind. My hands lie on my knees and tremble. They always tremble. The doctor says it is damage to the nervous system. The mew left a mark. The ports were cut from my skull, but the connections remained in my brain. Neural paths laid down through years of link with the machine. This will pass, he says. In time the brain adapts. But 8 months have passed, and it has not. There are other symptoms besides the trembling. Headaches every day. As if the needles are still in the ports, biting, burning. Painkillers do not help. Phantom pain, the doctor explains. The brain thinks the link still exists. It sends signals, but no one answers. That is where the pain comes from. At night I dream, not dreams, nightmares. I am in the cockpit, hands on the console, needles in the ports, screens showing targets. I fire again. People die. Hundreds, thousands. I cannot stop because the battle circuits have looped. I wake in cold sweat, heart hammering, hands clenched around an imaginary trigger. Several times the staff found me on the floor, curled up, shaking, muttering orders. Target at 11 o'clock. Distance 8 kilometers. Fire, fire, fire. They lifted me, led me back to bed, injected sedatives. I slept until the next nightmare. There are others like me, cut away from their titans. Not many. In this infirmary, about 15 in a separate wing, away from ordinary veterans. We are a special case. Mu severance syndrome, the doctors call it. I meet them sometimes in the dining hall, in the corridors, in the garden. All the same. Empty eyes, trembling hands, flinching at loud sounds. One of them, a former censor officer from the Reaver Iron Requiem, told me once. Do you know what the worst thing is? Not the pain, not the nightmares, the silence. I no longer hear the machine. No reactor hum, no circuit resonance, nothing. Only silence, as if I had gone deaf. And that silence screams louder than any sound. He killed himself a month after that conversation, hanged himself in the shower. Perhaps he finally heard something besides silence. After the Mu disconnection, the true final one, when the tech priests cut the ports out of my skull, withdrawal began. Like an addict, as I said. The first 3 days I did not sleep. I only lay and stared at the ceiling. My body convulsed. Bones ached. Skull split. I heard reactor hum, knowing there were no reactors. Knowing it was hallucination, phantom resonance. A brain trained for constant link generating ghost responses. But I hear it all the time. Low and steady, like a heartbeat. At night I wake to whispers. Voices of the dead and the machine. They are gone. There is no link, no ports, nothing, but I hear. Fire, fire, fire again, more. Sometimes it is Princeps Hale, his voice hoarse, mechanical. Sometimes Mara cries as she did in the cockpit. Sometimes Rusk says nothing, only breathes heavily, exhausted. And sometimes it is Noctis itself, not a voice, an impulse, a howl, the wolf calling. The battle circuits written into my neural network demand return to the cockpit, to the chair, to connect the needles, to merge with it again, to become its hand, its weapon, its death. I told the doctor. He shook his head, prescribed pills, said it would pass. It does not pass. 8 months have passed. I still hear it. My hands still tremble. My body still hurts, as if I am being shot over and over. Phantom pain from a phantom titan, dead but alive inside me. Mara is not here. She could not endure. 1 month after evacuation, she killed herself. A razor in the bath, quiet without screams. She simply opened her veins and lay down. When they found her, there was a smile on her face. Rusk vanished. He fled the infirmary and left no note. Where he went, I do not know. I think he went back to war because he could not live without it, without noise, without battle, without circuit resonance. He disappeared. Perhaps he died. Perhaps he found another legion, another titan. I do not know. And I sit by the window, watching the fields, hearing the reactor hum of Noctis calling every day, every night, calling me home, to the cockpit, to the dark, to the machine. And I know, sooner or later, I will answer. Not because I want to, because I cannot do otherwise. Part of me stayed there inside the dead titan, in the ruined hive among bodies, among ash. I think I never left, only my body was pulled out. I am still there. Sitting in the chair, hands on the console, needles in the ports, listening to Princeps' orders and firing again and again and again until the targets end or the ammunition ends or I do. A grave that walks across worlds. That is what a titan is, not a weapon, not a god machine, a grave for those who serve it, living dead who still breathe but no longer live. We are buried in a steel womb, in reactor heat, in reflex loops of memory. And we will never, never get out.